A major new case about gun rights is heading to the United States Supreme Court, drawing national attention and sparking debate across the country. At the heart of the case is a Massachusetts law that's become a flashpoint in the ongoing struggle over gun rights and state authority. The central question is this: should a person with a valid gun permit from their home state be allowed to carry that gun in another state, even if they haven't obtained a new permit there? Or should each state have the power to decide who can carry firearms within its borders? This case tests the delicate balance between the Second Amendment's guarantee of the right to bear arms and a state's power to set its own public safety laws, which can vary widely from place to place. The outcome could affect millions of gun owners, law enforcement officers, and everyday citizens, potentially reshaping gun laws and enforcement nationwide. The case also challenges the limits of the Supreme Court's 2022 Bruin decision, which ruled that gun laws must be consistent with the nation's historical traditions, but left many questions unanswered. Now, the justices are being asked to decide if the right to carry a gun for self-defense truly stops at a state line, or if it should extend across the country. For years, America has had a patchwork of gun laws, with each state setting its own rules. This has created confusion and uncertainty for travelers and gun owners alike. A gun owner who is following the law at home might unknowingly break the law simply by crossing into another state, risking arrest or prosecution. The Supreme Court is now considering whether to hear this case, a decision that could set a new national standard for gun rights and state authority. If the justices take up the case, their ruling could redefine what it means to carry a firearm in America, impacting not just gun owners, but the entire legal landscape. In this video, we'll break down the Massachusetts law at the center of the controversy, introduce you to the man challenging it, and explain why this case matters so much right now. Stay tuned to learn what's at stake for you, your rights, and the future of gun laws in America. The Massachusetts law at issue requires non-residents to obtain a special permit if they want to carry a handgun within the state's borders, even if those individuals already have a valid concealed carry permit from their home state or another jurisdiction. For visitors, this means they must apply for a temporary Massachusetts permit, a process that's often slow, complicated, and filled with uncertainty. Local police chiefs have broad discretion to approve or deny these permits, making it especially tough for out-of-state visitors who may not know anyone in the area or understand the local process. Supporters of the law argue that this system protects public safety and ensures that everyone carrying a gun in Massachusetts meets the state's strict standards for training, background checks, and mental health. Critics, however, argue that the law unfairly burdens law-abiding citizens and effectively denies them their Second Amendment rights when they cross state lines, even for a short visit or family trip. The process is so difficult, time-consuming, and expensive that most visitors simply can't get a permit for a short trip, leaving them with few legal options. Opponents say the law treats legal gun owners as potential criminals the moment they enter Massachusetts, regardless of their record or intentions. This law highlights the stark differences in gun regulations across the United States, where each state sets its own rules and requirements. Some states require no permit at all for concealed or open carry, while Massachusetts has some of the strictest and most comprehensive rules in the country, with a strong emphasis on oversight and enforcement. The legal showdown now centers on whether states can set their own standards for gun permits, or if they must recognize permits issued by other states, similar to a driver's license. Gun rights advocates say the law infringes on a fundamental constitutional right and creates confusion for responsible gun owners. Massachusetts officials counter that their rules are essential for public safety and reflect the will of their residents. The Supreme Court must now decide which view will prevail in a nation where gun laws and opinions are as diverse as its people. At the center of this case is Philip Marquis, a New Hampshire resident and lawful gun owner. Marquis is known in his community as a responsible citizen, someone who has always followed the rules and taken care to comply with the law. He never imagined that a routine drive would change his life so dramatically. His legal trouble began after a car accident in Massachusetts in 2022. What started as a simple fender bender quickly escalated into a much more serious situation when police arrived on the scene to investigate. Police found an unloaded pistol in his vehicle. Marquis had stored it safely, following all the safety protocols he would at home. Though he had a valid New Hampshire permit, he lacked a Massachusetts one. The laws between the two neighboring states are very different, and Marquis was caught in the middle of this legal patchwork. Marquis was arrested and convicted for illegally carrying a firearm. The conviction shocked him and his family, who believed he had done everything right. He argues this is unjust. He was legal at home, but became a criminal by crossing a state line. For Marquis, the difference of a few miles meant the difference between being a law-abiding citizen and facing criminal charges. Marquis claims the Massachusetts law violates his constitutional right to bear arms. He believes the Second Amendment should protect him, no matter which state he's in. His challenge says the law makes it nearly impossible for non-residents to exercise their Second Amendment rights while traveling. For many Americans, this creates confusion and fear about crossing state lines with legally owned firearms. He also argues that the right to travel between states is fundamental, and Massachusetts punishes people for exercising both rights. Marquis' case highlights the tension between state sovereignty and individual freedoms. Marquis' case has become a symbol for the debate over whether gun rights should be portable, like a driver's license. Supporters say that just as a driver's license is recognized in every state, so too should a gun permit be. Supporters say he's a responsible gun owner caught in an unfair system. They argue that the law targets ordinary people, not criminals. They hope his story will persuade the Supreme Court to lower barriers for visitors. If successful, Marquis's case could change how gun laws are enforced across the country. The case asks if the Second Amendment protects carrying a firearm for self-defense anywhere in the country, not just at home. It raises questions about the balance between public safety and constitutional rights. The outcome could set a precedent for gun rights across state lines, shaping the future of how Americans travel and protect themselves. Supporters of Marquis argue the right to bear arms shouldn't end at state borders. They compare it to free speech. Your rights don't disappear when you travel. They want national uniformity, saying the current patchwork of laws is confusing and risky for law-abiding gun owners. 25 Republican-led states back Marquis, urging the Supreme Court to require states to recognize each other's gun permits. Reciprocity. They cite the 2022 Bruin decision, arguing there's no historical tradition of banning visitors from carrying firearms for self-defense. In the past, people could travel with their firearms. Massachusetts law, they say, fails the Bruin test. The 14th Amendment is also key. Its purpose was to protect citizens' rights, including bearing arms, from state infringement. Legal scholars argue this means states can't strip visitors of their right to self-defense. The right, they say, belongs to the citizen, not the state. A national standard would make gun laws predictable and fair. For supporters, this is about protecting a fundamental right everywhere in America. Massachusetts and its supporters argue that states must have the power to set their own gun laws for public safety. They say each state faces unique challenges and should decide who can carry guns within its borders. The law isn't a total ban. Non-residents can apply for a permit, just like residents. The state's highest court upheld the law, saying it fits with the Bruin decision's historical test. Supporters warn that forcing states to accept out-of-state permits would undermine strict safety standards. They fear a race to the bottom, where the weakest state laws become the national standard. Massachusetts believes requiring a permit is a reasonable regulation, not a violation of the Second Amendment. The right to bear arms, they argue, has always been subject to reasonable limits for public safety. For them, this case is about preserving local control over local problems. The Supreme Court's 2022 Bruin decision said a new standard gun laws must align with historical tradition. Since then, the court has sent mixed signals, upholding some regulations, like banning guns for those under domestic violence restraining orders, but declining to hear other major challenges. The court has shown caution, shaping gun rights but not rushing to clarify every issue. The Massachusetts case is different. It asks if states must recognize each other's gun permits. The court has never addressed this directly. Whether it takes the case will signal how far it's willing to go in defining the Second Amendment's reach. The decision could set a major precedent for gun rights and state authority. If the Supreme Court rules against Massachusetts, states could be required to recognize gun permits from elsewhere, creating a national reciprocity system. This would be a huge win for gun rights advocates, ending the confusing patchwork of state laws. Gun owners could travel freely with their firearms, as long as they have a valid permit from any state. But states with strict gun laws would lose control over who carries guns within their borders. Officials warn this could undermine safety standards and increase gun violence. A ruling against Massachusetts could also spark new legal challenges to other state gun laws. The decision would set a powerful precedent for future cases. America's gun law landscape could shift toward a more uniform, less restrictive national standard. As the Supreme Court weighs the case, the nation is watching closely. The outcome could reshape the balance between gun rights and state authority. If the court declines to hear the case, Massachusetts' law stands and the patchwork continues. If it takes the case, the ruling could establish nationwide permit reciprocity or affirm states' rights to regulate. The decision will guide lower courts and shape gun policy for years. At stake is the meaning of the Second Amendment in a mobile, modern society. The ruling will define what it means to be a gun owner who travels and what states can do to protect public safety. Both sides are preparing for a decision that could set a new course for gun permits in America.